Okay, let's have a look at Ivanchuk's second round win versus Scotland's Colin McNabb, who always seems to play this fianchetto system, G6 at some points. So highly experienced. You would expect wouldn't be like positionally murdered, nothing major like knights on D5 or whatever. You wouldn't expect that, would you? But that's actually what happened in this game. White managed to get a fantastic knight versus bishop. Fundamentally, knight versus bishop, with this bishop kind of locked in and this knight securely on d5 without these pawns able to challenge it. So on the surface of it, it looks like a basic positional crush. Anyway, so c4 bishop g7. I'll show you how it emerged like that. So knight d7 e4. So we have a kind of King's Indian with knight d7 being played. E5, bishop e2. So black plays knight gf6. So we're not in mainline King's Indian positions because knight c6 would have been played to provoke d5. So white plays bishop e3. I think white's slightly better. And now after castles we see a sort of double fianchetto idea with b6. Possibly, maybe black could have played rook e8 here and try and play like ed at some points with knight c5 and a5. There's other plans in the position, but b6 is an interesting double fianchetto idea, okay, to fianchetto both bishops. So rook e1, now black does play ed4, so we have the double fianchetto. But after f3, it's fairly solid, white's position. It hasn't, e4, yes, it can, there's a bit of pressure on e4 potentially. So rook e8, queen d2. So maybe white's going to try and play bishop h6 at some point. And now Colin plays the curious move c6. So Ivanchuk just completes his kind of pretty development with rook ad1. So this looks all very pretty, doesn't it? Nice aesthetics. The two rooks are together, the two bishops are together, the two knights are together. Isn't that really pretty? And we have the kind of Maroczy bind formation against d5. So it's time to do something concrete, something positional. So basically, Ivanchuk plays b4 with a basic idea of just undermining the d5 square. So after rook ad8, he plays now bishop f1. This is useful, I think, against d5 because there's more potential for maybe cd and bishop h6 and maybe e5 at some point. So it's a quite little waiting move. Is black going to try and break out with d5 here? But he doesn't. He plays knight e5, and now we see the move bishop g5. So nasty pin on that knight. And now Colin, he plays a6, but now we see this undermining of the d5 score with b5 anyway. So AB, and now c5. So d5 is now weaker, and after knight c2, not only that, black's faced with a logical regrouping of this knight. Sometimes it's good to go backwards to go forwards, as they say. I think it was a French quotation. I was reading it earlier actually, and it applies especially to knight moves. That sometimes with knight moves in particular, go back to go forward. So knight goes back to c2 to go forward with knight e3 to d5. So now we see the move c4, which looks as though on the surface it's not the sort of move you like to play really. It's not very flexible move. It's offering fixed targets. Is black's counterplay going to be lessened as a result? Well, actually another quiet way to move king h1, just holding the position at the moment. So no h6s for black, no moving the knight, no moving the d pawn, no knight to c4s, no effect of queen c5. Is black's position start to suffer a death here? Well, actually black decided to try and give himself some activity with this knight move, so offering a pawn with knight d3. So bishop takes cd, and for some reason Ivanchuk didn't play queen takes d3. Let's quickly check. Is it really bad to play queen takes d3? I guess it probably is. There's some deep tactic here, or obvious tactic. obvious tactic, in fact, rook c8, because actually these knights are under too much pressure here on the c file, so that's something to avoid. Okay. So Ivanchuk, he carries on playing positioning, engine off. He just goes for that d5 square. So knight b4. As I mentioned, you know, if white can get a knight to d5 and there's no adjacent black pawns, there's no pawn on the c file or e file, then there's going to be no e6 or c6. So once a knight arrives on d5, bishop f7, bishop takes f6 is a logical part of that. We're going to reach a terrible position with black having no counterplay, with just a better knight versus bishop, and not only that, he's just snapped up a pawn as well. So this, I would say, is not an ideal scenario for black at the moment. So he plays h5, which, although yes, it's aggressive and it will probably beat maybe a lot of people under ECF 200, this kind of attack, but against Ivanchuk, you know, he's very, very tactical, and this kind of thing's just going to be hijacked against his own king. It's just not going to work. I'm not convinced by this. And you know, there's no way, surely, that this black attack, it's just not supported enough. So knight a6, attacking the queen, maybe trying to get possession of the c file. If queen c2, maybe take and just rook c1. So black took on a6, and now we see queen a5. Black's counterplay is now looking absolutely dead. I think John Nuns once said grandmasters try and avoid dead positions like the plague. You know, they'd rather offer material or whatever, but it seems as though black's attempt to create counterplay with the knight d3 move hasn't been particularly successful or effective. So queen b5, and now we see the scary bishop e5. Really, this is pointing at the white king. Should Ivanchuk be worried? Well, actually he wasn't. He just played f4, and now to bishop c3, just rook e2. So now black continues the potential attack with king g7. Try and switch the rook over, maybe h4, h3 to try and generate some chances. Not likely, but in fact, instead of being afraid of that plan, it's almost as if Ivanchuk's saying, well, you know, come and get me, I'll give you the h file, and I'll even fragment my pawns as a bonus, because I'll play this move, g3. So, you know, well, be taking on h4, and you'll get an isolated h pawn. So, you know, black's tempted by that. Okay, so Colin plays h4, and Ivanchuk just takes. So what on earth is Ivanchuk playing here? You know, is he not frightened of this h-file attack, or this dark square bishop? Well, I mean, it's all on the concrete of the position. And here, now, I mean, with this dominant knight on d5, it's continually exerting a lot of pressure on the black position. White just played rook c2. And black's really getting overloaded here. I think rook takes h4 is just asking for it. Just knight takes c3, queen takes a5, and obviously just winning material. So black has to do something about the bishop. And now we see this check, queen b2 check, and the rook's actually a tactical liability on h8. So maybe that's one of the points of this invitation to attack, that black's actually weakened himself, and the actual attacking units, the actual rook itself on h8, which, you know, maybe some players would have thought that was a frightening rook to encourage, especially with a move like g3, that is actually the tactical target here. And if say king g8 there's knight f6, so the black king must escape this knight f6 check now. It's diabolical, really, that this bishop coming off the diagonal is causing this. So now rook takes c8, so the rook's not even on the h file, and now this move queen g2. So white's hijacked black's attempts for an attack. Okay, his h pawn's pre, but there's a tactical reason as well why it shouldn't have been taken, which is revealed in the next move. I wonder if you can spot it if I give you 5 seconds starting from now. Okay, just queen h3 and black resigned. His rook and his bishop are just tactically, you know, he's losing material. There's nothing really to attack here, or is there? Is there queen takes a4? No, because queen takes h4 is check. Just take the bishop with check. Doesn't have to take the rook. Taking the bishop with check and then just moving the rook. So it's a bit of a disaster, starting with positional disaster. Let's have a look at it from the beginning. So it looks as though on the surface it was first of all pretty development and a sort of simple idea of undermining d5. Black's attempt at counterplay was just neatly sidestepped with this move knight b4, not losing any material on the c file, so increasing that bind on the d5 square, giving up the dark squared bishop to further increase domination of d5. So black seems to be just material down with little compensation. But the intriguing thing here is the further provocation of black to further weaken himself. So when he played king g7, it's as if, you know, some players would have been frightened, you know, h4, rook h8. But Ivanchuk says, you know, come and get me and leave all your pieces to be taken, basically, including your rook on h8. I'm playing g3 here. So yeah, play your h4. So the rook just ends up as a tactical target now, as we see after this check. And then there's queen g2. I mean, all these pieces are tactical targets. White's threatening all sorts of horrible things now with queen g5 and f5 and f6 maybe. So it's black was finished off now with just queen h3. Quite another crushing game from Ivanchuk. So please leave any comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.